and welcome to the CET CXO Connect series. I'm your host Anup John from CET 2001 batch. We are conducting this series to share experiences from CET and entrepreneurs with our audience to inspire and motivate a new generation of entrepreneurs. We have here with us Mr. Zahroof Mohamed, the founder and president of Zahroof Valves Inc. The company was founded in 2010 with its headquarters in Houston, Texas. It develops, manufactures, markets, and sells a patented revolutionary valve and associated products for reciprocating compressors. He is an alumnus of CET, having graduated with a mechanical engineering degree in 1989. Welcome, Zahroof.
Thank you.
It is very interesting to see that we have quite a few people from the 1989 batch in the US, and quite a few of them are entrepreneurs themselves. So would be great to know your experiences in your journey from CET in 1989 all the way here. Maybe a brief intro about that would be good.
So yeah, basically I graduated from CET in 1989 with a mechanical engineering degree. Soon after that, I came to Texas A&M University, which is in College Station, Texas, to do a master's in mechanical engineering. But I specialized in aerodynamics and aerothermodynamics of turbomachinery. So soon after I graduated from Texas A&M, I joined Atlas Copco, which a lot of people might know in India also because it's got a plant in Pune, a really old plant also. But I was working in New York, and this particular division of Atlas Copco was manufacturing centrifugal compressors. And after about 2 years of working in production, I actually got into R&D. And ever since, then I've been in R&D developing new compressors, next generation compressors, really. So I was with Atlas Copco in New York till about year 2000. I guess I'm one of the lucky guys who has been able to stay within hardcore mechanical engineering, and not have to go out into a different field. And so after New York, I was asked to go to Belgium, which is the headquarters for Atlas Copco Compression, to actually develop their next, generation screw compressors, as well as transfer some of the technology that we had in New York over to Belgium. And I did that for a couple of years. At the end of 2003, I came back to US to get my green card, as well as to get all those things going. In US, I joined a company called York International, which is now Johnson Controls. And York is one of the famous companies in refrigeration. So I was there for 2 years. I had a non-compete with Atlas Copco for 2 years. And at the end of my non-compete, I actually joined Cameron, which is in Houston. So in 2005, I came to Houston, and as a principal engineer for the company, I was in charge of all the new product development in centrifugal compressors, which was in Buffalo, New York. I was in charge of all the new products in turbochargers in Salina, Kansas. And in Houston itself, I was in charge of some of the reciprocating compressor stuff. And I was asked to, look at a new product that they were developing, which was actually a valve for reciprocating compressors. So that's when I first got involved with reciprocating compressors. So it was actually later in my career that I actually got into reciprocating compression. So after that, after a couple of years with Cameron, I was invited to join Samsung Techwin, basically. So a division of Samsung Techwin, which is power systems, actually manufactures compression equipment. So centrifugal compressors for the whole of Asia, South America, and things like that. So I was asked to be the chief engineer, and also I started up their Center for Turbomachinery Excellence in Houston, and developed a new line of compression equipment for them in the gas compressor industry. So I worked with them for some time. Wasn't too keen about working for a Korean company because of the cultural differences and things like that. And then decided to start my own company, do what I've been doing for other companies, that is develop, new technology kind of stuff. And that's when I started Zahroof Valves Inc., Zahroof Corp first, where I developed the technology, and then started Zahroof Valves Inc. in 2010 to actually commercialize the product. In between all this, which is actually very important, right, is I got married in 1992 to my neighbor in Trivandrum, who actually also came to Texas A&M to do a master's in English, Bindu Nair. And then on the way, 1995, I had my first son. And in 1997, my second son, who are now both graduated from college. So that's, that's also a defining part of your whole life, right?
Yeah, that's it. See, you seem to have had a very interesting journey from engineering and then into R&D, and then start innovating on what you have been doing, and then finally taking what you have been doing all those years and commercializing that as a your own product, right? And then continuing your innovation in those areas. It's very interesting, especially given the fact that engineering education in India, right? There is still a strong push to move people into innovating and R&D than just rote learning from content and books that we have had for maybe 50 years. Right? We have to. There is, and this is something that CET itself is really trying to push at the moment to get more research-driven activities all the way starting from CET. I'm sure that would have helped you if you had had access to some of those capabilities right while you are still in CET.
Yeah, I would say that, but then, this is all 2020 kind of thing, right? And I think some of the things that we were able to do in CET and the type of education that we had in CET led to what I'm now, right? It might have been different if things were different, but you can't say what could have been. So what I find with a lot of the Indian students, coming from India, and I actually hire a lot of students who come from India and who have done their masters over here. They have a very good background in theory, but especially I know things have changed quite a bit in CET right now. I was actually quite impressed by what Tarun had put about the Baha, the race and things like that. Those are really interesting things. But the college, the technical or theoretical knowledge, right, that they can fall back to, aligned with the kind of hands-on, kind of innovation that you need when you are trying to do work on a project like something like that, right? Together, it's a really good combination.
So you mentioned your background in theory, right? Can you also, maybe this is something that our current mechanical engineering students would love to hear. Can you give a little more insight or maybe a brief understanding of what exactly is your product? I tried to do a little bit of reading upon the valves and the technology behind it, Modular Reed Valves, right? It would be good if you can please share a little bit about that and maybe what it does and what is special about it, right? Maybe something for mechanical engineering students too.
So, I think the broad topic that we're talking about today is about entrepreneurship, right? And, in mechanical engineering is an extremely old field. I'm like lots of things that have been here for hundreds of years, if not thousands of years, right? So basically, I'm in the field of reciprocating, compression, and I decided when I joined this when I started this company actually, to develop a product which, based on my experience with Cameron as a principal engineer, I knew there was a huge market opportunity worldwide, And so basically, reciprocating compressors are used in many different applications. And if you take a look at oil and gas, where Houston is the center of gravity for oil and gas in the world, pretty much, I would say. And reciprocating compressors are critical equipment there. And the most important component in a reciprocating compressor, which determines, how efficient it is, how often it has to be serviced, how often it has to be put down, etc., is the compressor valve, And so, so I decided to tackle that problem. And so I came up with a design, which actually I took a look at what was, critical to quality, CTQs in a reciprocating compressor, which is basically, I kind of narrowed down to about 4. And one of them basically was efficiency, second thing was reliability. Third thing was ease of service. And 4 was inventory, which were broadly the 4 things. And so the technology that we have is a valve which is extremely different from conventional valves and old valves. So for instance, just to give you a background, the plate valve, which is the modern compressor valve, which is found in about 80 to 90% of all compressors installed in the field, was invented in 1890 by Horbiger, right? A person called Horbiger who started the Horbiger company, which is based in Austria. So this is the largest valve company out there, and they own, about 80 to 90% of the market share in this particular space. And so this technology was going on pretty well, and there hasn't really been a big change in how this technology works since 1895. So the flow of gas through this valve is pretty much the same. So the big innovations have been in 1950s, and 1970s, where they started introducing some new different materials, so plastics instead of steel as moving elements. And but the flow still remains the same. And actually, what I see, what most of the companies are doing is they're making changes mostly to protect their own market share, because right now, if I want a new valve, I can call up a company in China and give them a part number, and all the patents are gone, right? So they'll send me a part which is really low cost, and I can put it inside. It's got the same materials and it'll perform equally well, right? So the big companies right now are making small, minor changes, which really doesn't do too much about the functionality, and it gives you the market share. It protects your technology for some time. So the technology that I came up with, so most of my life I was in turbomachinery. So that's still what I consider to be my core, knowledge. So turbomachinery, you do a lot of analysis. Reciprocating compressors, you do very little analysis really, because it's a geometrical kind of thing. So I use some of the techniques that we use in turbomachinery to come up with a valve which is modular, and so there's no servicing involved. And the design of it is such that the flow path is straight through the valve, which makes the losses inside the valve very, very low compared to conventional valves. And the fact that it's modular means that you can service it. There's no machine involved. So we offer a guarantee of 10 years compared to less than 1 year for conventional valves. We actually, increase the life of applications from about 2 weeks to about more than 3.5 years in really difficult circumstances, like in shale gas and things like that. We improve efficiencies by anywhere from 3 to 15%, which is a huge number, which means just by taking out old valves and putting our valves in a compressor, you're saving 3 to 15% of fuel, or you can use the same equipment to push 3 to 15% more flow by converting the power that you save to flow. Those are huge numbers. And then on top of that, because it's modular, we reduce inventory by 80 to 90%. There's no need to actually stock fully assembled valves, things like that. So the product is starting to, come up on stream. People have started accepting the technology. They're seeing the benefits of the technology, and slowly we're converting a whole bunch of companies, and they're changing the entire fleet to our valves.
So what you have said is very interesting. So you have looked at something that has been established for more than 120 years and innovate on that, right? This is something that people always tell, hey, what is there left to invent? What is there left to create? It has already been created, right? Something that I'm sure a lot of new wannabe entrepreneurs are saying, right? Hey, I have been trying to find something to solve it, but I don't seem to find anything that I can practically or reasonably try to tackle. But you have taken on something that is already well established, well entrenched in the large players, and then still try to innovate. And that's very interesting message for somebody who's trying to look at something. So this also probably comes from your deep expertise in the space, right? So what you need to also see is that there is very strong understanding of the space that you bring, and then you looked at a problem and you tried to solve the problem, came up with a solution, and then finally solved the problem, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's very interesting. If you can, so if you think from a new startup business or somebody who's trying to start something on your own, right? What do you think are the three key skills that they would want to they would have to build in their journey as an entrepreneur?
So I'm going back to some of the stuff that you were just saying right now, right? So mechanical engineering is very different from, like, for example, a kind of a modern engineering space. For example, I would say like IT, computer science, where things are changing all the time, right? And things are relatively new. The technology is pretty new. And robotics, for instance, which is something else that mechanical engineers can get into, right? Those things are changing on a regular basis because things have not been set as yet in stone. But getting into a space which is old, like compression, which has been there for years, it's difficult, right? Because hundreds of very smart people, or thousands of very smart people, have been looking at this problem for hundreds of years now, and they've got some benefits of using computers and all that stuff to do some calculations and things like that. But they've already looked at it a lot, right? So mechanical engineering, if you really want to get into the kind of technology that is very fundamental, right? You have to have a lot of experience. That's my opinion. You have to have worked on it for several years, and you have to gain a lot of knowledge before you can make improvements to it. You have to understand what the old technology is. You're trying to improve what has been established over hundreds of years. So it's different in that, but in mechanical engineering compared to some of the other more modern kind of engineering fields, I believe. So going to the three most important skills, right? Or skill sets that you need to become an entrepreneur. I'm like, in my opinion, there are lots of articles about this that you can get on the internet. But to me, number one thing is passion. Real passion for what you're trying to set out to do. You should really, when you talk about it, you need to exude that passion, because basically that's the passion that's going to be motivating not just your employees, but the people around you, investors. Everyone has to look at you and say that, okay, you are really invested in this. You really want this to happen. And so I think that's one of the fundamental things that's required. Then the second thing that I want to point out, again, I'm trying to find out things which are not that commonly available on the internet kind of thing, is you have to be able to take risk, because when you do a startup, when you're doing something new, things are not going to go as planned, because basically you're doing something no one else has done before, especially if you're working with a new technology. You don't know what you don't know, right? So you can make all the plans that you want, and it may not work out. So you have to be able to be the type of personality that can take that kind of a drawback, or something that's considered to be even a failure because you planned something, it didn't happen, right? You have to be able to take that in stride, absorb it, understand it, reassess the situation, and then plan for what you're going to do next to make it still a success. Because just because one part of it failed doesn't mean the whole thing failed. It's one thing that you looked at failed, you actually learn from it. That's part of R&D, really, So, and then you find out what the best solution is, and you go forward, right? So you have to be the type of person who can take this ups and downs in your life, because there's going to be a lot of that, right? So until the company becomes a little bit more established and a bit more, especially in the beginning, you're going to see a lot of this. So that's one important thing. And then third, you need to be the type of person who can, kind of let go a little bit, because you cannot handle everything. You need to have the right people around you. The problem with some R&D kind of people like me, engineers, mechanical engineers who've got a lot of experience and who think that they're good and all kind of stuff, is letting go, right? Because you have all this knowledge and it's your company, it's your baby, right? But at some point you need people that can complement you, because you don't need to have all the skills, right? Because one important thing is to be able to market the product. You need to be able to talk in front of a crowd, and you may not be that person. You don't have to be that person, but you need to get the right person around you. You need a person who in finance, you need a person in marketing, let's say, in sales, which are different skill sets. So you need to be, that's an important skill set, to get the people around you, delegate work, make it a proper team so that the company is successful. Yeah.
So there are 2 points from what you mentioned here. I like those 2 points. One is that, hey, you have to have deep expertise and you don't necessarily have to start outright, right? So I'm sure, I mean, mechanical engineering being one of the largest departments in CET, I'm sure there are quite a few alumni out there who would have started thinking, hey, maybe is it too late for me to start something? Maybe it is not, right? That's one thing. And then the second thing that I felt very interesting was that, hey, do I really have all the skills to start something on my own? No, maybe not. It doesn't matter, right? If you're passionate about what you're trying to pursue, it is all about finding the right kind of people, right kind of partners you can work with, which is also very important from an alumni community perspective, right? You would already have had built a lot of very strong relationships with a lot of people in your community. And I'm sure quite a lot of these people are potentially people that you can work with, right? Not just people that you work with in your professional life, but some of these people are people that you could trust with your lives. So if you can meet both capability and passion, I'm sure there are a lot of opportunities out there for people to really collaborate and build businesses on their own. Now back to that question on somebody who's looking to start something on their own, right? What would be your advice to somebody out there, a mechanical engineer who is out there thinking of starting something out on their own? What would be your advice to somebody like that?
First of all, let me make clear that not everyone needs to be an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah.
It's not suited for everyone, right? I'm like, there are lots of people who are extremely good at their subject, who will be very happy working with a very big company, and doing really well, and if they're happy, they have job satisfaction, then they shouldn't, think about other things. I'm like, that's what makes them happy, right? But if you're starting a company, if you're thinking of starting a company, the first important thing, first of all, is to assess yourself. Are you the type of person who can handle this, right? Most likely, the person is already working for a large company, has got a secure life, and maybe even has a family, right? You have to really question yourself and see, at what stage you are also. Like if you're young, if you're single, you just got out of college, then you can take much more risk. If you got a family, you got kids, you got a particular lifestyle, are you willing to, go back, get really down and dirty and then be a little bit of a risk taker? So you have to make that assessment. The second thing I think that's really extremely important is, what is your product, right? And is it a product that is going to be a hobby? That's something that you like doing? Or is it going to be a commercial success, right? Is it actually a product that you can make a business out of? In order to really understand whether a product can become a business, I think that, you have to do a business plan, right in the beginning. You have to write a business plan. And, most likely I'm talking to engineers in this group, and engineers are good at technical stuff, but they are limited in financial stuff. I was limited in, the financial side of things, right? So you have to really take a go at doing a business plan for the product. Try to come up with how much is the product, what is the market size, what is the opportunity size, right? And then how much is it going to cost for me to make this product? How can I mark, how much is it going to cost? Is it, what is the differentiation, right? If there's no differentiation in the product, then I'm going to be competing on price. And I don't really want to compete on price because somebody else can make it cheaper. I don't want to get into that game. That's personally, I think most people would be like that, right? So is there something that can differentiate it, that can, that you can command a market for, right? And then the another thing is, how do you protect your IP, right? Because, when you come up with a new product, a lot of the initial problems is trying to get this into the market and get it as accepted in the market. At that particular point, you don't want somebody else to come in, right? Because your IP, there's no protection for your IP, and they just take over, right? They bring in a product which has similar features, is cheaper, and then they take over the market, right? And take advantage of all the hard work that you put in to make it accepted. So those are some of the things that I would say that a person needs to do when thinking about starting up a new business around a product, around a technology product.
So, with as somebody who has been running a successful mechanical engineering business, I'm sure you would have a lot of insights and in learning and understanding, right, that you have acquired over all these years. Is there some way you think you can contribute that back to the current student community or the alumni community? And is there something that you would want alumni community or even the alumni association to specifically and proactively do to help you do that? How do you think we as a community can better leverage on people like you, and how do you think people like you can potentially help the community in this idea of, hey, how do you build more entrepreneurs? How do we drive more innovation? How do we drive more R&D? How do we get more successful innovations coming out of the community, right? It would be good if you can share your thoughts on that, and specifically on what you would like to see, and maybe what you would want people to reach out to you for.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is what you're doing right now, for instance, right? I'm like, you need to get the information out. You need to talk to as many different people as possible who have had the experience of doing something, right? Because I'm sure my experience is going to be completely different from somebody else in a different space, right? Everyone has got an individual experience, and you can learn from different people, right? I'm like, and I'm like, if you come up with a unique product, it may be a completely different path that you have to take, right? But listening to other people's experience is going to give you a lot of ideas. And then there are some broad things that you can get from the internet also. But it is better if you can find somebody from the same college or some from the same environment, right? So you have a better idea. So listening, right? I'm like, or hearing their experiences, what we can do. That's really the most important thing that we can do. So, things like podcasts like this, perhaps actual meetings. I'm like, because, if I'm put in front of a mechanical engineering group, I'm like, maybe not just fresh graduates, but even people who are a couple of years, in the industry and are seriously thinking about it, they'll have very, specific questions that I can answer, and that can only happen in a open kind of a meeting, kind of a discussion group, that I've done a couple of things over here for different groups over here. So that can be really helpful, So those are the two things that can transfer the information and knowledge that we have, that can help other people. We could probably also take a look at, and make suggestions about the curriculum, about what kind of things are being taught in the college. That's some advice that we can give also. Yeah, those are I think are the two main ways.
All right. As a successful entrepreneur and somebody who is actively engaged in R&D, I think this is something that CET would definitely be interested in looking at, especially given the fact that CET is looking to increase the volume of R&D outcomes from the institution from the perspective of the NIRF ranking. Research and development activities are a key parameter for increasing the ranking of the institution. And with the help of people like you, I'm sure we can increase such activities within the institution and also inspire more students to pursue such directions rather than getting some kind of job and getting settled with that. I'm sure there would be potential to generate more people like you from the college.
Yeah.
Any specific, this is anything that any specific area that you welcome people to reach out to you for? You mentioned technology and entrepreneurship. So these are two things that you will be happy to help students and alumni who potentially reach out to you for.
Yeah. Well, I'm always looking for good mechanical engineers, I'm like, people with a little bit of experience. So one of the things I really value is people from a good undergraduate college, from India, but I always want them to have a master's degree from US or something, to back it up, So one thing that I look at in resumes is basically which college they come from in India, because we know the number of colleges that you have, all the private colleges. So the standard, the quality is not the same. But, College of Engineering Trivandrum, I'm like, is a really good college. It's one of the best sought after colleges. It's not so tough once you get into the college, but actually getting to the college means that you have achieved something. You have done some of the right things in your past. So you are a pretty good quality, person. You got all the right ingredients to make yourself, make your successful engineer, right? So yeah, so one of the things I'm looking at is, I'm like, if you see an opening in our company website, I'm like, apply, and that's something that we are looking at all the time. But I'm when you're doing a startup company, and one of the biggest problems you have is time. So I don't have time. Obviously, I'm like, I'm really busy with a whole bunch of trying to run the company and set it up and things like that. So time is limited. But if I have, some time available, I'm more than open to come in and do something productive, constructive, short, but very constructive and productive. I'm open to that. I do come to India quite often because we have some, we actually outsource. That's one of the things that I do. I'm like, I go back to the place that I'm familiar with, right? So we got outsourcing that's happening from Coimbatore and Madras and Baroda and things like that. So I do come to India quite often, and I have family in Alway, so that's my base. And so I can always, adjust some time to be able to come to Trivandrum or someplace and then help provide some kind of lectures or something or sort for students.
Thank you for your offer. I'm sure we'll be able to organize something around one of your trips to Kerala to have you speak to the students in the mechanical engineering department. I would like to thank you for your time today. This has been really interesting and exciting. Personally, I think somebody who is pursuing innovation, pure innovation in something very fundamental is very interesting. And you have already done that, and you already started making your mark in a very well-established industry. Congratulations to you on that, and I wish you all the very best as you pursue this journey. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
I really appreciate what you're doing. I'm like, I think looking at what you're doing, I think that's a really good way of, making the whole college as well as opportunities for students much better too. Really appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you.